development and advocacy work. Our more than 150 members in over 125 countries work in a coordinated and effective way for right-based and sustainable development.
We work together for justice to truly be action by churches together. Over the last 6 years, we have witnessed incredible progress in our organizations, communities, and countries.
We are proud of the developments made towards achieving gender justice. We started with a special event 6 years ago, and today we have created incredible momentum and commitment across the membership. This success must be celebrated.
The locally led work of the ACT forums and communities of practices has been incredible. They have worked together tirelessly to mobilize interconnected and international movements for gender justice and to implement gender justice policies across the membership.
We have put ACT firmly on the map in international and global policy spaces. The critical role that faith-based organizations play for advancing climate justice, gender justice, promoting peace and human security, protecting the rights of the people on the move, and responding to emergency is increasingly recognized by governments, by the UN agencies, and secular civil society.
Our ecumenical advocacy in global and national climate policy spaces has been strong, especially in loss and damage and climate financing, just to name a few issues. We have also jointly implemented some of the biggest emergency responses in ACT's history. ACT members are currently responding in Ukraine, Gaza, Syria, and Turkey, Sudan, Myanmar, Ethiopia, Colombia, and many more other countries.
We have achieved so much together, but a few years on, our global contexts have become increasingly volatile and uncertain.
The aftershocks of the COVID-19 pandemic continues to be felt. The world is witnessing extreme crises, violent conflicts, and a galloping climate breakdown. Humanitarian needs are surging massively, with hundreds of millions of people requiring assistance and protection. A shrinking space for civil society, along with the rise of populism and fundamentalism, the polarizations, has weighted vulnerabilities, especially for marginalized groups, indigenous people, Black communities.
Many societies are becoming more polarized around conflict, economic disparity, the impact of climate change, people's race, origin, gender, and more.
We can do better than this. And by working together, we will do better than this. We owe it to God, to each other, to ourselves, to our children and their children. And this is what we are here to discuss today.
Welcome to the 2024 ACT Alliance Assembly.
We will start our next session. Can you hear me?
That was part of the show. Thank you. Good morning. It's a big pleasure for us to start this session, the thematic days. Welcome to the special guests, the ACT members, delegates, youth representatives, and forums and communities of practice reference groups. We are here, we had an introduction to the topics that we will discuss today and the days that are coming. And that is about Together for Justice, Towards Solidarity, Equity, and inclusion. Especially in times as we are living today, I will keep talking while they are adapting the button. It's almost? No, not yet. Yeah. Basically, I would like to, today we will have a lively discussions. I have the honor to introduce the facilitator, the master of ceremony for today. And I will read because I don't want to make any mistake. Emel Dwi Tuturunga. It's a Fijian and development specialist working in the Pacific regions and in global settings for the past 30 years, including being a senior civil servant for the government of Fiji and as head of the Pacific Island Associations of NGOs. She has been the Pacific voice at the UN and has been engaged in global civil society think tanks, so she is no stranger to such gathering. And I had the privilege to share with Emel a seat in the global reference group of one of our ACT members, Bread for the World, where we were addressing topics like that globally, how we as ACT Alliance and civil society organizations can respond to the challenges humanity is facing today. Currently, Amel is engaged with the Pacific Theological College, a regional educational institute with 20 member churches and in 16 Pacific islands. She's the lead for the Theological College of new program focusing gender and social justice, working closely with the Pacific Conference of Churches and also with the Methodist Church in Fiji's Women's Fellowship Program to address family violence. So, welcome, Amel. I wish all the best for this session, and I will leave you for this exercise.
Thank you. Thank you, Rodolma. I've spoken on many stages before, but I haven't had people working up my dress. So technology, when you want it to work, doesn't. Salamat pagi. Greetings and bula vinaka in my mother tongue. It's so fitting that this ACT Assembly is taking place here in Yogyakarta, the historical seat of interfaith and multi-faith in one of the world's largest Muslim countries. A very special recognition, and thank you to Yochum. A big hand to our local host, founded by the different church synods of the Central Java region. As we've seen and heard on the video, the Assembly theme, Hope in Action, Together for Justice, links the overall theme of your global strategy, the ACT Alliance global strategy. And it keeps the hope in action and adds the new phrase, Together for Justice. This opening session leads today's thematic feature day with the theme, Together for Justice towards solidarity, equity, and inclusion, highlighting the more positive concepts in terms of working towards the multiple divisions in our world, specifically addressing racism and strengthening decolonization. And we will start with two general introductory sessions to the overall theme, and then we will have the conversations linked to this. So our first session, we will have two high-level discussions on the topic trust and solidarity on their way out? Question. Our first discussant is none other than Mr. Norimasa Shimomura, the resident representative of the United Nations Development Program, UNDP, here in Indonesia. Ladies and gentlemen, let's give him a round of applause as we welcome him on stage. Mr. Shimomura started as the UNDP resident representative in 2020. He's been on the role for 4 years. He's had more than 25 years of experience at the UN. He told me at dinner last night that the UN is in his DNA, even though it has different mutations. He served as a UN resident coordinator in Kazakhstan and UNDP resident representative for Kazakhstan, and he has served in similar roles in Montenegro, Tajikistan, and Albania, Macedonia, and Georgia. Mr. Shimomura, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Amele. That certainly makes me feel getting old a little bit, but my spirit is still young. So, ladies and gentlemen, a very good morning to all of you. It's really, truly my honor to be joining you this morning here in Yogyakarta. As we navigate the complexity of today's world, we are here to ask ourselves, how can we reinforce trust and foster solidarity in a time marked by polarization, crises, and growing uncertainties? One of the most powerful answers lies in multilateral and multi-stakeholder cooperation, and I emphasize cooperation. In an interconnected world like ours, it is only through working together that we can address these complex challenges. Intergenerational and interfaith dialogues play important roles as they can help bridge the differences and promote mutual understanding. Faith-based organizations and religious actors hold a unique and influential position in this landscape. Their strengths are characterized by their long presence in the grassroots level and respect that they command from the communities as well as from the national authorities, their ability to reach out and deliver services to the marginalized population living in most inaccessible parts of different countries, and their concerns for peace and justice. During the COVID-19 pandemic, for example, UNDP, the United Nations Development Program, worked here in Indonesia with various faith-based organizations, starting with Yakum, who is the host of this event today, as well as with Pusad, Paramadina, and El Rohari, recognizing their important roles in dealing with the social impacts of COVID-19 pandemic. Faith and religious tolerance provide important foundations for achieving the SDGs as they contribute to social harmony needed in our increasingly diversified societies. In Indonesia, this is done through the notion of religious moderation as a way of exercising citizens' rights for religious freedom, creating positive narratives for the society to embrace. And this resonates with the Pact for the Future, adopted by the United Nations very recently, as it recognizes that spirituality can promote interfaith and intercultural dialogue as tools to deepen trust and foster solidarity. Working around the world in 170 countries and territories, UNDP, the UN Development Program, for its part, brings its strengths as we cover a broad spectrum of development issues with the ability to connect the dots across multiple sectors from health, education, climate and energy transition to digital economy. Being present with the communities on the ground, but at the same time having the crucial access to decision makers in the government, and also backstopped by our global network of development expertise around the world. UNDP works to promote human development by, it's working now. Great. So UNDP works to promote human development by building an enabling environment for all persons to be healthy, able to learn, and also have economic means to make their own decisions for their future, being free from fear and free from want. In doing so, we promote common goods, starting from human rights, because one's freedom cannot be achieved at the cost of others. Human dignity must always be respected, regardless of our differences and likings. Having many things in common, cooperation between a UN entity like UNDP and faith-based organizations provides a strong recipe to boost trust and solidarity. UN Secretary General's Our Common Agenda offers useful entry points for such a cooperation, as it highlights the need for renewed trust and solidarity, a social contract anchored in human rights, a better management of global commons, and global public goods that deliver equitably and sustainably for all. To realize these, we must take actions to promote peace, leave no one behind, build trust, abide by international law, and ensure justice, place women and girls at the center, listen to and work with the young people, and boost partnership, including with the civil society. You might wonder why a development organization like UNDP talks often about peace. A new agenda for peace presented by the UN Secretary General last year reminds us that peace is not a one-time achievement. Rather, it is a continuous process that requires prevention, mediation, and sustained effort for peace building. At UNDP, we think peace and development is indivisible, that development is an essential ingredient to prevent crises and conflicts. Investing in justice and inclusive system, as well as in human capacities, can build resilience against crisis. And where disruptions do occur, development can address the dear needs of the people and societies to recover and to bring the social fabric back together. Young people, especially interfaith youth leaders, have a pivotal role in advancing these efforts. Their energy, passion, and fresh perspectives are essential to promote social cohesion and drive progress towards the SDGs. Here in Indonesia, UNDP works with Peace Generation, Marif Institute, and many other CSOs, the civil society organizations, to strengthen the capacity of young leaders in promoting trust and solidarity among different groups of the society. Last but not the least, human rights framework. Human rights framework can serve as a common foundation on which trust and solidarity can be built, because they offer universal and objective principles that promote fairness, accountability, and inclusiveness. In times of eroding trust, reaffirming a commitment to these fundamental values helps to create a more just society where institutions are held accountable and all individuals are treated with dignity and respect. So by us working together, we can bring hope to the people who need it most. If we are to build a better world for the future generation, we must ensure that our world represents the plurality of its diverse voices. As we continue our discussions today, let us remember that trust and solidarity is not lost, but must be nurtured through collective effort, shared values, and unwavering commitment. By working together, we can build a more inclusive, peaceful, and sustainable world for all. Thank you very much.
And there you have it. Let's give him a round of applause. Our second discussant is Ms. Alisa Gotrinanda Munawaro Wahid, publicly known in Indonesia as Alisa Wahid. Psychologist recognized for her work in democracy, diversity, interfaith cooperation, and empowerment. Alicia, you're welcome to the stage. Let's give her a big hand. She is the National Director of Gus Durian Network Indonesia, promoting interfaith dialogue and minority rights. She's the first female co-chair of Nahdlatul Ulama, the biggest Muslim organization serving over 50 million Muslims. But she still leads, even though with high profile, leads grassroots initiatives speaks to thousands annually, and writes for Compass daily. You're a household name and a household person. Let's give her a very big hand. She's also won many awards, 2015, 2016. Let's hear you.
Thank you, Emil. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Selamat pagi and sugeng enjang. This is the expression of the Japanese people. And I hope everyone can see me because I'm challenged.
You're okay.
In terms, we have the height challenge. And usually podium are the enemies of people like me. So I'm glad this is a smaller one. Thank you for the organizers. I learned that there are three kinds of people: a person of ideas, person of concept, and person of action. I belong to the latter two, so I might not be able to talk about concepts and abstracts, but I can share with you what we have been doing in a Gus Durian Network. Gus Durian Network is a vast network of grassroots level activists, especially this is a multi-faith based activist, but we tackle everything from the lens of humanity and justice. So we have different work at the grassroots level, but it's always from the multi-faith perspective. When we talk about the current situations about trust and solidarity, what we see, at least in Indonesia, is the three divides. The first one is the spiritual divide, where we lost faith and values as guiding principles of our lives. We have the social divides, the one challenge that we have with others in living together on this earth. And the third one is the ecological divides. That's what we are seeing in our world, even in Indonesia. And one of the biggest problem is the political divides. And part of the problem with political divides is actually how religions sometimes is used as the justification for political competition. We have research by, why I forget his name, about hate spin, when religious sentiments are being used widely for political contentions. So those are the challenges that we are facing in Indonesia, but in my experience, exchanging, sharing knowledge and experience with other people from different places from the earth, I understand that this is also a global challenge. We have, in Indonesia currently, we have the religious exclusivism, where people tend to exclude others based on their religious faith and religious faith-based organizations. And we also have the religious majoritarianism, where this exclusivism, when met with being the majority, translates into superiority complex, modern colonialization, and that leads to discriminations and intolerance. Those are the challenges that are real in everyday lives, even in Indonesia. And we have the decline of democracy. We have a very good set of procedures, of democracy procedures, but we are seeing less and less fundamentals of democracy in action. So this is the current situation that we're facing in our work in Gus Durian Network. And how do we address this? I was trained in system thinking, and in system thinking, we always understand that the quality of the system depends on the quality of the awareness of the actors in the system. Sometimes what we have when we have challenges in a systemic context, what we do is be reactive to the challenges. Like, for example, if we have like a suicidal bomb in Indonesia or a terrorist attack, what usually happen in Indonesia is we have the religious leaders coming up on stages like this and proclaim there's no religion that will condone violence. This is the reaction. This is the reactive way of responding to challenges. The second one, the deeper layer, is actually to redesign the policies that is usually done at the global level and then the national level. But what I have learned is that to have certain policies, or even with the rightful paradigm, if we don't change the paradigms of the actors in the system, then the change in policies would not translate into a sustainable change or transformation. So that is actually the way we do things in the Gus Durian Network. We want to facilitate the change in the attitude and the paradigms of the system. Thank you, Mr. Simamora, for touching on the religious moderation program in Indonesia. I am actually one of the member of the task force for the Ministry of Religious Affairs, and we invest our work on actually facilitating the state actors to manage the religious life in Indonesia, addressing the religious exclusivism and religious extremism with a change of paradigm. That's why the program has been successful. I will talk later on the second session on this. So multilateral efforts would be very much needed if we want to tackle these challenges in religious exclusivism, religious majoritarianism, religious used for political contentions. Because this has been a global challenge, and because religion have the global characteristic, the solidarity across religion, you have it in a global context. The value-based system, you have it in the religious communities. The outreach up to the grassroots level to reach the unreachable. 2 weeks ago, I was in Papua. It's very remote areas in Indonesia. We have the religious leaders and religious communities working at the grassroots level. In places where states would not be present, religious faith-based organizations are present. And we have the close connections between religious leaders and their congregations. We have the connections from the religious leaders to the policy makers. Those are the strength of religious-based organization, faith-based organization, and it has to be capitalized towards a better world for us in a global context and localizing it up to the grassroots level. So with that, I will end my share of ideas, and I hope I am trained that hope is not a strategy. We need the hope, but it has to be hope in action. Just hoping is important, but it's not enough. It has to be turned into action toward a better and just life for everyone. Thank you. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Let's give her a very big hand for that. Now I'm going to ask both of them questions of each other. Shimamoro, you've heard Alicia talked about the work that they do and the connections, the linkages that faith-based organizations have. How do you see faith-based actors contributing to the rebuilding trust, countering some of the polarization and renewing global social contract?
Well, you want a short answer or a long answer? But the answer is the same because I think religious faith-based organization can play a significant role in promoting justice, trust, solidarity, and also effectively counter polarization. First and foremost, as I said, and as Ibu Alisa just mentioned, because you can reach the unreachable and be there with the people, provide the support they need. And honestly, faith-based actors have much, much bigger impact. Their words carry weight than if I went there and spoke UN language, inter alia, promoting, facilitating. So I think that's a big difference. And also, religious actors can mobilize a lot of volunteers who are skilled and highly motivated, and I should never underestimate that because they see volunteering as part of calling and their commitment for peaceful development. And they often have extensive networks of congregations, affiliates, individuals that honestly can provide an excellent channel for communication and also human and financing resources. So that's the strength of religious organizations, and that's why we see religious leaders often playing the effective role of mediators in conflict zones, and many work providing platform to mitigate the polarization, finding solutions together, advocating against violence, condemning the divisive narrative. But then I must emphasize that in countries like Indonesia, where there isn't conflict or open conflict, working with faith-based organization is also very effective. And as a matter of fact, UNDP works a lot with many of the faith-based organizations, many fronts. And I just mentioned our work about religious moderation. During COVID, also, we fought against disinformation and also facilitated a vaccination process because there was lots of myth about it. And on a socioeconomic front, we work with thousands of mosques in this country and the government to run a nationwide campaign against illegal plastics. So that's the kind of effort that we make. We also work with Basnas, the Islamic Endowment Agency, who actually gives us some resources to build community-based hydro power plant in an effort to revive the community economy and the livelihoods of the society. And I should just, okay, I know I'm going on, but I should also talk about Indonesia's achievement as it issued like 7 years ago, the world's first sovereign Islamic, green Islamic bond. We call it Green Sukuk in this country, and UNDP was assisting the country to issue this. To date, they successfully mobilized more than $8.5 billion US, and this money is spent to invest in green energy and infrastructure projects. So the list goes on. The impact is immense.
Yes, I'm sure. Lisa, you did mention redesigning policies in your address. What relevance do human rights and their frameworks have for faith-based work?
It is, check. It is very relevant because the human rights framework serves as a global concept that we can adhere to. We, of course, in Indonesia, we have the constitutions of Indonesia, we have the constitutional rights for the people, but having the human rights framework is like having the summary of all these universal values, especially from the spiritual sides or the religious-based, religious-inspired values. So we have the human rights framework and align them or reframe them for the religious values. In Indonesian context where religion, I don't know if if the participants here are familiar with Pew Research, Pew usually do like the global attitude survey, and Indonesia is always at the highest when it comes to the question how important religion is for your life. It's more than 90% of the Indonesian subjects would think that. So in Indonesia, religious values, of course, is the followers of that faith will be bound by those values, but the human rights framework will be like the global defining things. If I may, I will share with you what we call the trilogy of Ukhuwah, or trilogy of solidarity, that this is a framework for the Muslims in Indonesia. So it is said that for Muslim in Indonesia to uphold Islam rahmatan lil alamin, or Islam as the blessing to the universe, we need to uphold three solidarities. The first one is the Ukhuwah Islamiyah, or the solidarity between Muslims. This would be founded on the Maqasid Syariah principle. And then the second one is Ukhuwah Watoniyah, the solidarity of nationalism, of people from the same country. This would be founded on the constitutions. But we have the last one, Ukhuwah Bashariyah, or Ukhuwah Insaniyah. This is solidarity across humanity. And human rights framework will be the foundations and the umbrella paradigm to uphold this solidarity across humanity. So it's really important for faith-based organizations and also for civil society organizations to have the global framework as our guiding principles.
So a question to you both. World over, civil society is also being challenged in terms of enabling environment. So I'd like to ask you both, how can an enabling environment for civil society be strengthened to counter the polarizations established, especially in re-establishing the trust and solidarity, which I hear from both of you is critical for the work that we do? Start with yourself and then Alicia.
Okay, so CSOs, the civil society organizations, obviously play a very important role in overcoming the divisiveness, advocating also for the marginalized, and also promoting dialogue among different factors in the society. And they do require support in creating enabling environment, because with that, they may become very effective in countering polarization and advocating for justice and solidarity. First and foremost, for the CSOs to be effective in their operations, they do require a safeguard for fundamental rights, for freedom for speech, freedom for assembly, freedom for association, that enables them to engage in advocacy, open advocacy without the fear of repression. So this is basic needs. And of course, comes with that is the transparent legal framework that supports their registration to start with, funding, also all sorts of activities without unnecessary bureaucratic and political interference. But at the same time, they need resources and capacity building support from donors, governments, international communities, whoever is willing to do that. Because CSOs do need technical assistance to deliver effective advocacy. They need digital literacy these days. Together with that, you need data management skills, conflict resolution in difficult conditions. So this is absolutely important. But at the same time, I think we need to create an environment in which civil society organizations not only implement things, but they also take part effectively in decision-making both at local level and also at the international level, and that they do that as they collaborate with other CSOs around the world. So that's quite important because the global and regional networks enable them to share best practices and
Alicia.
also tackle
Yeah.
many issues together.
Alicia, from your point of view, how do we strengthen civil society, especially to reestablish trust and solidarity?
Yes, Indonesia enjoyed a robust civil society movement, and from our experience in Gus Durian Network we operate in 130 cities across Indonesia, and we are probably one of the largest multi-faith network in Indonesia. So what we experienced before we set up the Gus Durian Network, all the religious leaders, multi-faith, they work at the local level but not connected and amplified at the national level. But when Gus Durian Network was established in 2011, so when we still do the local work, but because we have the national network, then the challenge in the grassroots level will be amplified by all the other members of the network, and that translates into a better advocacy. So we have been successful in releasing the worship places building permit. This is usually the biggest challenge in Indonesia, to build a worship place for the minority. So we have been able to do that. We have been able to engage the local religious leaders to address issues like ecological issues regarding the indigenous communities, so on and so forth. So this is really important. The civil society movement is actually the one doing the public education, but also the one advocating for change of policies and work with the religious leaders. So that would be the most important role of civil society. And we need all on the field, if we look at it as a garden, for the civil society to thrive, we need the soil, the sunlight, the water. We need that for civil society to really change for the better in energy.
Well, time has caught up with us, and I'm sure we could go on, but for this opening session, it's very clear that the role of faith-based organization is very much needed. They reach the unreachable. You had mentioned mobilized volunteers. You talked about working at the community level, changing the mindset, the paradigm shifting, but you also shared the relevance of the human rights frameworks. And UNDP, of course, and the United Nations agencies are working at this. And the critical importance of having an enabling environment to strengthen the work of civil society, and including faith-based organizations in terms of advocacy, working with those in diversity, equity, and especially in terms of our theme for today, working together for justice. Ladies and gentlemen, let's give a big hand for Mr. Shimomura and Miss Alicia for this session. Thank you. I thank you very much. I know you have to leave shortly, so you're most welcome. And Miss Alicia, you can remain on stage. And ladies and gentlemen, this is now a buzz session where you can turn to the next person next to you and just have a buzz. Talk to each other. What's the takeaway? What are the key messages that you've picked up from this morning's session? So turn to each other, left or right. Don't all turn in one direction, and share what are the takeaways from this session. Thank you for that. That's great. Yes. So as we'll invite the other panelists who will be joining us for this next panel session. I think there'll be a video. Oh, yes? Yeah, really? Okay. Saraka, you're good? Okay. And I think we have, so we'll be passing this around. Be the first Nika, so I'll leave this here. Yes. We'll you have second, right? Go that the video in. We're having the video now. But no, I'm at public. We have a video message from the United Nations High Commission for Human Rights that should be coming on shortly before we start our session. Okay. All right. Right, sure.
My greetings to all of you at this challenging time. More and more conflicts are shattering lives, livelihoods, and our shared future. In every region, we are seeing increasing polarization of societies into distinct and hostile groups. Ethnic minorities and foreigners are under attack, and religious minorities face rising violence and hatred. In this context, it is essential that all actors of goodwill, whether they be states, religious leaders, faith-based actors, or other members of civil society, work together to promote human dignity, social cohesion, and respect. Peace and security, sustainable development, the universal human rights that are at the core of equality, justice, and freedom, all these profoundly precious values are literally at stake. Whether they are theistic or non-theistic believers, or indeed atheists, all human beings have equal rights, including the rights to practice their faith, to speak out, and to participate fully in society without discrimination. In the 18 commitments on faith for rights, religious leaders and faith-based actors pledge to stand up for the right of minorities to participate equally and effectively in cultural, religious, social, economic, and public life. To provide humanitarian assistance, regardless of the recipient's creed and without adverse distinction of any kind. To publicly denounce all instances of religious hatred that incite violence, discrimination, or hostility. To address hate speech through compassion and solidarity that transcend the boundaries between faiths. And to ensure that religions and beliefs are not instrumentalized for political benefit. These commitments are vital. The world needs faith-based actors to come together and promote respect. We must knit together a renewed social contract based on trust, respect, and compassion to overcome religious hatred. Last month, United Nations member states adopted the Pact for the Future. In it, they promised to step up the fight against religious hatred, which constitutes incitement to discrimination, hostility, or violence. They also emphasized that to be effective, this work must include faith-based organizations and civil society. Since 2017, my office has been facilitating the Faith for Rights network, where participants share lessons learned and act jointly for human rights. In November, we will organize another hybrid week of the Faith for Rights community of practices. It will focus on promoting the essential principle of women's equality and the commitment to combat the instrumentalization of religions, beliefs, or their followers. In addition, live and online Faith for Rights courses are available from academics and practitioners in Abuja, Beirut, Cairo, Paris, Ottawa, Oxford, San Jose, and Washington, D.C. My friends, with turmoil and hatred being whipped up around us, inertia is not an option. We must make a difference by working together for cohesive societies that are enriched by diversity, including in terms of religions and beliefs. Networks of faith-based actors can step up to promote mercy, compassion, and solidarity. They can join hands with diverse communities to promote shared goals, social, developmental, and environmental. Humanity has a unique capacity for connection. We are skilled at communication, at managing change, and achieving cooperation with groups that are not identical to our own. These are characteristics that have kept human beings alive again and again throughout history. It is our turn now. We need to raise our voices more powerfully. We need to do everything we can do to advance justice, freedom, and equality. This alliance and its members have achieved much important work across the world, including by providing humanitarian aid. I call on you to take a leading role at this deeply troubling time in working for respect, dignity, and rights.
We have a panel of world leaders. When I read your bios, you've traveled, you've worked at global level, at community level. Oh, hold on, there's some food, and I noticed something there. I'm told this is an Angkringan, where there's food you actually can eat, and it's kind of a place where people get together and have something, and if you don't mind, I'm gonna try. I'm sorry, audience, you wait until lunchtime, right? It's coming, it's coming. Okay, so it's a push cart where there's drinks and there's food, so please help yourself. And normally people gather to have conversations, social conversations, and serious ones, so feel free to have a bite. Very nice. Okay, so on this session, we'll be discussing Together for Justice. Strategies, the how. I came from the airport with one of the delegates, and he was saying, we can all agree, but how? So panelists, your role is to share strategies for countering exclusion and fundamentalism and for realizing justice. Ladies and gentlemen, let's give these 6 world leaders a very big hand. And to start the conversation, Nika Saidi, she's the UNDP Global Lead on Mental Health and Psychosocial Support and the Global Focal Point on Religion and Development since 2014. Previously, you've led efforts on prevention of violent extremist and hate speech, and for over 27 years, you've impacted global policies and partnerships. You've lived in 7 countries, even in Afghanistan, where you increased women's leadership by 25%. Let me ask you then, all across the world, we're seeing polarization across gender, race, and human mobility. If we focus on race and human mobility, how do we more effectively counter negative narratives on migration and refugees and ensure access to rights and protection? And which strategies, approaches, and processes has UNDP used and have been successful to counter exclusion and promote diversity and equity? Sorry, it's a bit long, but I'm sure you have a lot to say.
No, thank you.
And I'm going to have some more. Carry on.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Really appreciate being here and such a wide participation across the board. It's really, really enriching. And I used to live in Indonesia, and I believe in the concept of bringing people together and eating together. So thank you once again. I want to focus on the racism, because race is a social construct. Racism is real. Racist attitudes get exacerbated by issues around human mobility, by refugee migrations, internally displacement or externally displacement, in any way you want to name it. Why? Because it helps creating otherness. It helps creating a concept around dehumanizing another person, which is actually against the faith. Faith creates compassion. Religion, religio, is about to connect. And the whole notion of racism is against the reason we are all here together. So UNDP work across 40 countries around the world dealing with the whole forced displacement. It's a world issue right now. We're all aware of that. And we work in a variety of ways. We are trying to raise awareness, share different stories. I always tell people, you know how much is the remittances? It's $800 billion. The money of the UN, faith-based organizations, philanthropic organizations, maximum reach 80 billion. It's almost 10% of the money of migrant workers give back to their community, to their family, to do what we are here to do. So we can share different stories, but the stories that are shared that contribute to the racism and challenges the refugees in their country that they are being hosted, it doesn't happen in a day. It has happened throughout years to be built. And that's where the faith-based organization and UN need to think together before things get completely out of order. Because when it's online, I don't think we do have a power, even when we work with the media, to really challenge what is happening online. So there's a lot of work that we can do, thinking, moving from response to a much more long-term planning, and really building on the connections that you have with your constituencies, that bringing that early warning signs to the light. So of course, this is one of the areas we can work, and UNDP has been working in Uganda, in Ethiopia, in Lebanon, Syria, we can just name it. And the second issue is, of course, is job creation, service delivery, and I can go on whole development, and I was just looking at the exhibitions, how much through different works you are doing across the world, you are the forefront of that. But I also want, since I also lead on the mental health psychosocial support, MHPSS in short, and also I believe the reason I like to do this work, because it's bring the human mind, body, soul, a triangle of the wholeness of human being. And the role faith-based organization, religious actors can play and are playing, and Alisa, you're a psychologist and you naturally have been drawn to work on the whole religious moderation and tolerance, is how much we are actually mindful of increasing challenges with the well-being at the individual and the community level, how much we are dealing with the stigma, how much we are reaching out to the communities. Because mental health psychosocial support, it talks about the well-being and inner self, calmness, mindfulness, and we are all have experienced during the COVID. And also it talks about the trust and the trauma that impacts the relationship with the community and with institutions, and how we are, and we can think differently on bringing this to the refugees who are shattered by being displaced from their own origin, from their own community, the experience that they go through. And to build trust, we need to deal with a healing-centered, and I believe faith-based organizations, religious actors are in a greatest position, and they have been doing, and they can think more through that, how much this is something they can contribute further, and I would welcome a collaboration with UNDP. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Nika. So it's most appropriate. Let's give her a big hand with our next panelist, Reverend Jackie Manuputi, who's the General Secretary of the Communion of Churches in Indonesia. You've been a pastor at the Maluku Protestant Church since 1997, been a long time. You served at the Indonesian Protestant Church in New York while studying at Hartford Seminary. And you've been the director of the Maluku Protestant Church's Research and Development Agency and taught multicultural education. In 2017, you became the assistant to the President's Special Envoy for Interfaith Dialogue. As inclusion of local actors is a means to build trust and solidarity in humanitarian response and sustainable development, what is the role of the church? And Nika has been emphasizing the key role of religious and faith organizations. What is the role of the churches in strengthening inclusion of local actors at the community level, particularly those at risk? And what would a justice and value-based locally led response contribute to working together for justice in shaping public policy and discourse around sustainable development?
Thank you. Thank you, Emily, to bring this question. I'm so glad to be here again among all of you, all the resource persons from all over the world. That's really deep and connected with the issue we discussed here. So back to your question. You know, in Indonesia, religions play a significant role in social and political context. That is why churches in Indonesia actively engage in strengthening the local actor and grassroots community to critically address the sustainable development issue. We face numerous challenges related to climate change, ecological justice, public health, human trafficking, indigenous people rights, and freedom of religion or belief. The fourth issue, also the the kids' rights. In facing all those issues, we develop a church-based advocacy, the framework that operates at the 3 levels. First, at the grassroots level, we empower and assist local actors to manage public and environmental issues. The church organizes various programs at this level, including training of trainers, training of facilitators, paralegal for the women movement, educational and literacy initiatives to strengthen the community at the grassroots in dealing with some particular issue they face in the daily life. On the intermediate level, we mobilize network of NGO, of experts, of practitioners who focus on related issues and work collaboratively to support grassroots community. And at this level, we also promote cooperation among different religions, religion, and fostering tolerance and social inclusion. So I came from the post-conflict region, Muslim-Christian region, so we also develop peace through development. So peace become an entry issue to bring people from different groups and work together in dealing and facing the climate issue, all the common social issues. So at the top level, we advocate for change in policy and regulation that hinder the sustainable development. So a notable example of our work in 3 different levels, if you Google the Safe Aru Islands movement, ARU, it is a movement of community-based approach, the church-based approach, the interfaith-based approach to save and protect the 300, the cluster of islands in Maluku province from ecological destruction by canceling plans for large-scale sugarcane plantation. This movement was initiated by local community in the Aru Islands with support from the Protestant Church in Maluku, but also from the interfaith network in the local community, in the national community, but also we gain support from international community. So interfaith-based, faith-based organization play a very significant roles in strengthening the local actor and bring them to participate in the sustainable development. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's give him a big hand for that. Very critical role, the 3 different levels you talked about. Sekar, you're next. You've worked with Yakum Emergency Unit since 2020, focusing on disaster response, risk reduction, and climate change adaptation. You've collaborated with at-risk community groups to ensure their rights and empower them to build resilience. You currently support over 30 local women's groups in Yogyakarta on adaptation projects. You also serve as co-chair of ACT Alliance's Youth Committee of Practice for the past 2 years, and to enhance youth leadership, and I believe you had a key role in the pre-assembly youth, and maybe you could share a little bit of insight into that. So in the face of increasing polarization on climate change and financing, what strategies can we use to ensure that climate vulnerable countries and communities receive adequate support and polluters live up to their responsibility? What are the respective roles of states, private sector, faith-based organizations, and others in this process?
Thank you, Emily, for the critical questions, and thank you for having us, the youth, in these conversations. And I'm based in Yogyakarta here, and usually I used to have the angkringan in the side of the street, sitting in the ground, and it's the whole next level and experience to have this kind of conversations, the angkringan with all of you here.
Oh, great.
and thank you for the questions. And from the perspective of local organizations and youth, we know that facing the climate crisis is really a great challenge. And from our discussions, we found that although we are coming from a diverse context, we have the similar gaps and injustice experienced by the women, vulnerable groups, and youth, mainly in the access to information, education, and employment that make young people increasingly pressured and anxious about the uncertainty of the future. And it is affirming the statement by Mr. Nori in the previous discussions. And as well, the absence of the political will that narrow the freedom of speech that puts youth in the unsafe positions. And regarding, and according to our youth pre-assembly some times ago, where we had productive and inspiring climate solidarity actions, we agree to strengthen youth participations and leadership in decision-making in various platforms and level, including in ACT Alliance to tackle the climate issues. Through our works in our organizations, we employ 3 primary strategies to address these questions. The first is building collective awareness. In building resilience, collective awareness is very essential as the key of success. We need to communicate clearly in the most accessible manner about the realities of the climate change and its negative impacts in our lives and our community. It is very crucial because climate change often feels invisible, but its long-term consequences are dangerous and can threaten our future as a youth. And the second one is engaging in the conversations. We must engage in understanding these issues and leading the conversations, raising awareness, and motivate the collective actions. We can raise the awareness to our peers and communities, and we observe that the community-led initiative have shown that to be the effective and sustainable way when we are involving the youth voices and experiences. And the last but not least is amplifying voices. To have grassroots and youth voices amplified and heard in the policy and decision-making process is very important. By representing youth and affected communities, we can bring very critical message that to achieve sustainable solutions, the funding and resources need to flow directly to the local communities. These steps not only strengthen youth leaderships, but also it helps to ensure that the solutions are relevant, effective, and reflects the needs of the community. However, to tackle the polarizations that we're facing right now, we have to commit as an alliance to encourage the youth leaderships by ensuring the equitable representations and positioning youth as equal partners by having the seats on the table. And finally, the youth participations and involvement, it's not only empowering us, but it's also nurturing innovative and inclusive solutions that leads to a more sustainable and just future for everyone. Thank you.
Well, that's a youth leader. You know, it's often said that, you know, young people are tomorrow's leaders, but in fact, they are today's leaders leading tomorrow. So let's hear their voices as well. Welcome back, Alisa. I've introduced you earlier, so, but I didn't mention that you serve as the SDG ambassador for the Indonesian government, and you're on the advisory board of Mental Revolution. Wow, and I did read that you did get some awards in 2015 and 2016. So you're a substantive woman, a woman of substance. As polarization and violent conflict are increasingly prevalent in so many parts of the world, is interfaith cooperation to counter hate speech and polarization a promise or a pipe dream? And what strategies have you used on countering this?
I would say that it is neither a promise or a pipe dream in Indonesia. Interfaith cooperations truly change the context in Indonesia. I will share with you. So we started the religious moderation program. The government of Indonesia started the religious moderation program in 2019. Before 2019, we have an increasing cases of religious-inspired local conflicts everywhere, including the protest against religious worship places by the local communities, especially the majority of the communities at the local level. We have so many challenges. We have the biggest one is, of course, the one that Reverend Jackie was involved in putting an end in Maluku. But since 2019, we roll out this program with the religious leaders, and we have seen a decrease in numbers of cases. We have seen a more prepared state actors to protect freedom of religion and belief, and we have seen a rise of index of religious harmony in Indonesia. So, and we have seen less violations by state actors. And how do we do this? In religious moderation program, like I said, we focused on helping and facilitating the actors in the system to understand the complexities of the situation. We do that by, employing deliberate strategies, mechanism like iceberg analysis or 4 dimensions mapping with social presencing, theater, all kinds of innovative approaches. And that helps the actors in the system because, the current situations that we have is the result that we all work together to create, but we do not like, or we do not want that. So together, we produce the result that nobody wants right now. So helping the actors in the system to really understand the complexity of the situation, and also the current mental model that creates this problem really helps them. And then get them to examine, especially for the religious leaders, to examine the religious values, the religious framework that is more suitable for the current challenges and the current civilizations that we want to create. And because of that, we are able to help them to rethink, to create new mental models that then would inspire the redesigning process. So it's not just a public policy redesign, but it has to start with a new mental model. So that's I would say the true the interfaith cooperations is in helping to create the new mental models that would lead us to a better life. And we have been training like more than 50,000 state actors, religious actors, youth actors, and we are translating interfaith cooperations not only in challenging the interfaith problems, but now to more pressing issues like poverty, the internal gaps between the Eastern Indonesia and Western Indonesia, or even ecological challenges in Indonesia.
Wow. Helping actors in the system. Usually it's the system that causes a lot of problems. Now I'm going to move to Reverend Sibelikus, who is the Executive Secretary of the Lutheran Foundation for Diaconia in Brazil. And that's been since 2013, nearly a decade. And the organization was created by the Evangelical Church of the Lutheran Confession in Brazil. but you've been very engaged in human rights issues, advocacy, and especially gender justice. And when I Googled you on Google, I see you in action, talking to women, doing this, showing that. Polarization is often most pronounced around gender. So how can we counter backlashes and attempts to roll back human rights? And what strategies do we have from the ACT Alliance membership like yours around this?
Thank you, Emily. I would say that one strategy is not to stigmatize or judge people, groups, communities, and also institutions' adherence to conservative views on gender and sexuality. Our question might be, why are people adhering more and more to regressive human rights agendas on gender? If we stigmatize one another because our political and theological positions, polarization can increase. This does not mean giving up clear distinctions between democratic and anti-democratic narratives and projects, between a commitment to human rights and an attack on their foundations. The thing is that polarization is present among us. It's here today, it is in many places. And we need to find a way to go through polarization, reducing social suffering, especially for women, Black and Indigenous women, LGBT people. Do not stigmatize groups beforehand. Once again, neither the idea of manipulation nor the spontaneity on gender and polarization can help us. We need also to understand from different contexts that the colonialist project in the Global South and its violence have shaped obedient, racist, and misogynist society. We know that racism and patriarchy are systems of power that operate permanently. We should not stigmatize and judge. We need to understand how to go through this context. From Brazilian perspective, we have also learned from Paulo Freire, popular education, and from popular reading of the Bible, from the decolonized feminist theology that is precisely in oppressive religious and political space that there can be gaps for a path of resistance that questions, in the midst of polarization conflict, the theological and political narrative that sustains social suffering and the control of the diversity people's lives and body. The center of polarization is the colonization ground, its deep roots. I also could bring many examples how women, young people organize themselves to confront polarization in churches, in faith-based organizations, also supported by ACT Alliance, especially for ACT Alliance and Justice program, as well social movements such as Black and Indigenous women in Brazil, for example. But I want to address men. I want to call men to take responsibility for reducing polarization around gender. To reduce polarization around gender, you need to compromise. And you see, it's not a new strategy, but is a strategy still to be done. Mostly white, cisgender men always have a say in lives and bodies of women and LGBT people. It's urgent that men can give us hope as well. it's urgent, dear brothers and comrades. É urgente, queridos amigos, irmãos e companheiros, that you make the decolonization of your masculinities a priority and a strategy so we can achieve hope in action and truly be together for justice. Thank you.
Well, men. You know, in the Pacific Islands, we're now beginning to have conversations about the role of men and boys. Too long they've been left out, and you're talking about the accountability and the colonization of patriarchy and masculinity. Anyway, our last panelist, Alistair Doughton, Secretary General of Caritas Internationalis, and having previously served as the Chief Executive of Caritas Scotland, Humanitarian Director at Caritas Internationalis, with over 25 years in international relief and development, and you've worked in more than 60 countries. I thought 7 was the max. You worked in more than 60 countries. But your career began as a Jesuit novice with Jesuit Refugee Services in Caritas, Nepal. Ensuring an enabling environment for civil society as well as humanitarian space in a polarized and fundamentalist context, which levers do faith-based actors hold, and what strategies have you found effective in work on emergency preparedness and humanitarian response?
Thank you, Emele. Firstly, good morning, everybody. It's a huge pleasure to be with you all, and I'd like to greet you all on behalf of everybody in the Caritas network. It's wonderful as Caritas to be present with you all today and for the next few days. Firstly, why are we even asking the question about negotiating space? I think as I look at the world today, unfortunately, the 20th century is well and truly over, and the world of the 21st century is becoming increasingly complex and contested. What do I mean by that? I think my generation, and I'm going to apologize to the youth representatives, our generation may look back and say we have been some of the most fortunate in the time we have lived. Perhaps starting with the League of Nations, but particularly after the Second World War, I think we have seen a global commitment to multilateralism and to maintaining peace in the world. I think today, and I would kind of say the 20th century in those terms, probably ended on the 11th of September. My second wedding anniversary as I watched those horrible events play out. And I think there we saw the seeds of the end of that post-war consensus. Now, as I speak, I am painfully conscious that I am a Brit from Europe speaking, and having spent time on the Pacific Islands and now in Indonesia in the last 2 months, I'm very conscious that my perspective is one, and it's one from a long way away. So I offer it, but it's by no means the whole. But I think in the 21st century, as we watch the decline, unfortunately, or the weakening commitment to multilateralism, I think the world is becoming more and more bilateral. There are more and more alliances between nations. Everything is contested. And it is about how we build alliances, how we build relationships, and how we forge power together. And as I say that, I'm also conscious that power is moving east and it is moving south. The balance of power that was established after the Second World War is largely being dismantled at the moment. And arguably that's a good thing. I'm not defending where power was, but as the plate tectonics of power move, there are vacuums in power being created. and there are new frictions as power is playing out globally. So we are going to need to be much more agile. We're going to need to be able to negotiate much better and use the powers of diplomacy in order to secure the space for us to work and to contribute. And what tools do we have as that, particularly as the Christian community and as faith-based agencies? I think the first thing we have to do, and here I enter into the first heresy of the day, we need to abandon our human rights fundamentalism. All I've heard so far today in terms of an appeal to a global something is human rights. Now, I want to be clear, I'm not saying human rights aren't important. One of the most fundamental parts of our human nature is that we're made in the image and likeness of God. As the psalmist says, we are made little less than gods. And from that comes our inalienable dignity and the human rights that follow. But I think there are 4 fundamental parts to our human nature. And 2,000 years of Christian tradition have distilled this out. I think the first, as I say, is our dignity. The second is that we are fundamentally social in nature. And unless we talk more about the social nature of what it is to be human, then we can't explain to people why honoring one another's human rights is really important. The third thing is that we thirst for the transcendent. We are spiritual in nature. In the Christian tradition, it's clear how we locate that. But when I listen to Volker Turk kind of almost allowing the faith-based agencies space on the stage, I want to claim the space that 85% of people in the world are people of faith. So we have a responsibility to step into that space, but we need to remember that that thirst for the transcendent is fundamental to us. And that will always take us beyond the boundaries that feel familiar or that limit us. So we can't be constrained by race. We can't be constrained by our community or our culture or our gender. We are always called to look broader, to look beyond ourselves, because the transcendent is always found beyond the boundaries, beyond the margins. And fourthly, it is no accident that we are here on earth. We are incarnate within the garden. And so we are fundamentally rooted within the ecology of this earth. And I think that teaches us 2 fundamental things. Firstly, that the goods of the earth are to be shared and they are limited. And therefore, we need to work within our planetary boundaries. We need to learn to share. And if we bring together our dignity, our social, our transcendence, and our rootedness here on earth, that gives us a framework. Those things exist in tension. You can't emphasize just one of them. Hence the need to end human rights fundamentalism, because we can't just have a focus on one. Thank you.
Wow. For a moment there, I kind of held my breath. But you know, there is also a movement of intergenerational conversations. For those of us, I know I look 16, but I'm actually over 60. You know, we need to realize that the demographics have changed a lot. We have a younger population, and so that's quite important. Now, we're running out of time, as always, when we get very enthused about this. And we were meant to have a 20-minute, oh, and the anchorage is still going, my goodness. Looks like we're going to have lunch here. Please, you know, have something to eat. But I will give you an opportunity, you know, a minute each. But I'll do a quick, you know, Nita, you talked about racism, you know, and the response to refugee, but you also talked about the importance of a holistic mind, body and soul. Jackie, you talked about the 3 levels that religious organizations are working very much at the grassroots level, you know, the interface of advocates like civil society, and of course changes at the policy level. Serka, you talked about that youth voice, you know, the importance of being at the table, you know, amplifying freedom of speech, access to information. Alicia, you talked about the importance of helping actors, especially state actors in the system, the rethinking, the redesigning. Sibeli, you just reminded us not to stigmatize, and calling on men, or calling out men to be accountable for the colonialism of, you know, patriarchy and masculinity. And Al, you know, in the Pacific, as we rethink a lot of this, we're using this principle of mutual contradictions. And when you talked about human rights fundamentalism, you weren't actually talking against it, but you were talking about the need to have other approaches and coming at it. So 1 minute each from the rest of you, or all of you, before we close the session. And we'll go to the youth first. Yes.
Yes,
and we'll then go to the other end, and we'll come back this way.
Yeah.
Thank you, Sarka. 1 minute, one minute.
Thank you, Emily, for the time. Yeah. For us, all the strategies that we just discussed, mentioned by the speakers, are actually the works that we do, and we have seen very inspiring and impactful initiative done by the youth, among the youth and their communities, and I've seen that they are usually self-funded. It's very grassroots and collective action. So I think that we really need to support and encourage by ensuring the fund to allocate to the youth, to scaling up the impacts. And the goals of the keeping global temperature rise is really not just ambitions, it's really critical for our future. And for achieving the goals, it will be incredibly challenged if our effort remain fragmented. So we really need to unite, share our experiences, and work collaboratively, intergenerationally, rather than letting polarizations hinder our progress. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Jackie, last statement from yourself.
Thank you so much. What I want to emphasize that indeed we share many commonalities and face similar challenges. So the global community eagerly anticipates tangible religious-based intervention. So this is time for action. We should stand together and strengthen one another, and let's move in more concrete way. May God bless us. Thank you.
Thank you. Nika.
Sure.
Hold it to your mouth.
Is that, yeah, it's working.
Hold it.
So, if I want to share one reflection, and I really love the contribution you have made, I believe we need to celebrate. We have been acting. The faith-based organizations have been active. Religious leaders and actors, they have been acting for a long time. So let's not allow the thought that we have not been acting get into us. We might want to think how we can act further, more collectively. And I like what Alicia, you mentioned on the majoritism, because what are the challenges that we can think of it? It's also freedom of religion and belief. This is in our hand, this is in our reach. We also can think of the minorities and the people who are not present in this space. These are the things we can think of it, because we can think of the gender, race, and the UN would also think of the gender and race. But there are issues that really, really you can make a difference. And I welcome that actions from you to help the UN also get it right.
Sibeli.
I would like to praise Reverend Sally Azar this morning from Palestine during her preaching. She said, justice is a reality that God calls us to do together. I also would say gender justice is a reality that God calls us to do together. Thank you.
I'll ask you before Alicia will end.
Thank you. I think listening to the other panelists, what stands out to me and the value of us as faith-based, as church actors, is that we must always be rooted locally. Intergenerational justice is so important. But from our local roots, we must always be going to the peripheries and to the margins. We must always be bringing the poorest and the most vulnerable into the centre, into our midst. And the work of justice will always begin by understanding one another.
Alicia, being the host country, I'll get you the last word.
Okay, thank you. When faith-based organizations and when people of faith work effectively together, it can really influence the other actors in the system. We can be the voice of coherence in an ocean of problems and challenges. We can influence the system. We can tip the systems. Faith-based organizations has the strength to create change. Faith-based organizations has the values to create change. And faith-based organizations have the obligation to create change. So if not us, who? If not now, when? We are the voice of coherence. And I wish you all the best in your service to humanity.
Thank you. Let's give the panelists a round of applause. You know, this panel and this morning session was also about, the alliance, which has been around for 14 years, even more in terms of, how long it took, and the prophetic voice. And we hear this morning the critical role that churches, that faith organizations, religious organizations have. 85%, we were reminded, of the world's population, that are faith-based. And so that's very important. Not forgetting the role of younger people in the intergenerational conversations, and working together for justice. I think that's the faith in action, together for justice. From the morning's panels, there is no doubt about it. Without each other, we can't do it alone. And I was reflecting, I was having dinner next to somebody, a leader last night, who was saying, I've worked at the local level, but not at this level, at this global level, even though that's challenged. But the connections between the grassroots, that we call it taro roots, whichever roots. But as you reminded us, Al, we need to be rooted. The periphery must come in. We must be centered. They must be front and center of what we do, and not forgetting all of that. So, ladies and gentlemen, there we have it. Today's thematic, event was to have your minds, your heart, your soul pumping for the next 4 days, and I hope that, that's given you a lot of thoughts. And of course, we've had quite a bit of food here that we've not even had time to share, but we will. So thank you again. Let's give the panel a very big round of applause. And that now brings our panel to an end. Thank you, everybody. Yes, and I think we can take our food and leave. Yeah? Thank you, Nika. Thank you, Jack. Yeah, thank you again. Thank you, Al. Yes. So I think at this stage we can take our food. Yes, you can take it. Let's go. If you want to make friends with us, that's fine too. It's time for us to go. You can take some of that. Yes. All right. So we can now walk off the stage. Well, we're meant to go around the back, but we can go around the front as well. That's okay.
They've taken all the food and left none for us. Let me offer you the final Salamat Pagi of the morning. We have had a rich and long and wonderful morning. Truly, without the opportunity to engage locally, without the interplay of the human rights perspective, an interreligious grounding, and a faith-based vision, we cannot go well together and we cannot achieve the world that we hope to see. And again, an enormous thanks to this morning's panels and to our moderator of this morning's panel. Very much appreciated everything that all of you have done. And in keeping with the sentiments that are expressed through the work that was shared this morning, we conclude our morning with greetings from our interreligious and governmental and Council of Churches guests, some of whom are able to be here in person and some of whom are not. And first, we will be receiving a video message from Dr. Maliki Ahmad from the Indonesian Ministry of National Development and Planning, who was not able to be here as he was required to remain in Jakarta.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Salam. Om Swastiastu, Namo Buddhaya, salam kebajikan, salam sejahtera bagi kita semua. Good morning to you all. Distinguished board members and the General Secretary of the ACT Alliance and the General Secretary of the WCC and the Yakum Board, and the beloved brothers and sisters of all ACT Alliance family from all over the world who are present today in the General Assembly. First and foremost, I would like to extend my sincere apologies for my inability to be present with you in person today. Ladies and gentlemen, inclusivity has been our government's priority in developing national and local programs and services. It is crucial to ensure the deliverability of our policy for all, including those who are marginalized socially and economically. Furthermore, we also promote a just and responsive policy framework. These commitments have been translated in our upcoming National Long-Term Development Plan. It is also important to note that Indonesia is renowned for its strong sense of community trust and solidarity, often referred to as gotong royong. In the spirit, the government actively promotes poverty reduction programs and grassroots initiatives that embody the principles of the community trust and solidarity. Therefore, it is evident that one of the most effective ways to combat exclusion is by promoting solidarity and trust at the grassroots level. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, as we look ahead, we must acknowledge the unpredictability of global and national trends in demographics, society, climate, economy, and governance. Indonesia is vulnerable to disasters, experiencing around 1,000 earthquakes and significant flooding that affects over 635,000 people annually. The looming climate crisis poses several risks, especially for vulnerable groups such as women, older people, persons with disability, and children, who are disproportionately impacted. Despite some progress in gender equality, significant challenges remain. Women face lower workforce participation rates and bear the double burden of household responsibilities, alongside persistent income inequalities. Global issues related to peace and humanitarian needs, such as the ongoing conflicts in Palestine, create a complex situation for many nations globally, including Indonesia. So as part of the international community, Indonesia is now a home to more than 12,000 refugees and asylum seekers as a result of international migrations and displacement. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, the government of Indonesia employs strategies to promote justice and inclusion for all, especially to enhance community resilience in responding to crises and adapting to shocks. These strategies include, first, is inclusive policies, developing policies that prioritize the needs of marginalized groups. The second, adaptive social protection. Third, comprehensive data integration, which is it is important to integrate socioeconomic registry data with other sources related to climate and disasters. Without this integration, building resilience in response to crisis remain challenging and fragmented. And the last one is collaboration with civil society. Collaboration with CSO enables the government to tap into their expertise and grassroots reach, acknowledging and crucial role that CSO play as frontline responders in disaster situations and emergency response on the ground. Ladies and gentlemen, in closing, while there is still much work ahead, the government remains committed to these strategies, focusing on strengthening resilience among vulnerable communities. I encourage all stakeholders present at this event to share knowledge and best practices on fostering a social contract and enhancing cooperations in the international system through solidarity, equity, and inclusion. Have a fruitful discussion. Thank you very much.
It's now my privilege to invite to bring us greetings, Ms. Aulia Tarufi, MDMC Pimpinan Pusat Muhammadiyah, representing the Muslim community and bringing us greetings. Assalamu alaikum, please come.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Salam sejahtera bagi kita semua. Shalom, Om Swastiastu. Namo Buddhaya. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I am Aulia from MDMC, Muhammadiyah Disaster Management Center, an institution tasked with coordinating humanitarian work under Muhammadiyah Central Board. On behalf of MDMC, I am honored to be invited to this ICT Alliance Forum and meet you all, my friends. And first, MDMC or Muhammadiyah has an inclusive vision in providing assistance to anyone without discrimination. And Muhammadiyah is also actively involved in Humanitarian Forum Indonesia, or we call as HFI, an interfaith organization forum for humanity, by becoming one of the founders, mentors, supervisors, and also administrators. In addition, Muhammadiyah, represented by MDMC, is the initiator and member of the Indonesian Humanitarian Alliance for Myanmar, or we called AKIM, and known in English as the Indonesian Humanitarian Alliance, or IHA. And the alliance, which consists of 11 humanitarian organizations, provide integrated assistance to international conflict, and we are also have EMT, or emergency medical team. First in Indonesia, Muhammadiyah have and verified by WHO. And thank you for your attention today. I hope we can work together in the future. Okay, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Selamat siang semuanya.
Next, it is my honor from a PHDI and the Hindu community to welcome Mr. E. Gede Suwardana to the stage to bring us his greetings. Thank you.
Good day, everyone. Om Swastiastu. May the God bless to us. Thank you very much for invitation, especially for Ex-Alliance. I myself, as the representative of PSD, we call Hindu Parisad, and all the Hindu community become one in this organization. Hindu, as the well-known, as the responsible to all, we give sewa, we give service to all. We never avoid to work together with others. I myself even, during my experience as the member of Hindu Parisad, and work together with the Christian, Muslim, and other religion here, actually very happy to come in this occasion. Hopefully, for the next time, we can increase our collaboration, especially in service to all, because all of us belong to Lord. We are son of God, and we also part of others, even nature itself. So, hopefully with this occasion, we success for future to work together to give welfare to all. Thank you very much. Om Santi, Santi, Santi Om.
We're so grateful to have Caritas represented so well today, and now it is my honor to therefore invite Romo Bernardo Simawan, the director of Caritas, the Caritas Indonesia from the Archdiocese of Semarang and Yogyakarta, to come and bring greetings to us on behalf of the community. Thank you.
Good morning, distinguished colleagues of ACT Board and member of Alliance. On behalf of Caritas, I would like to congratulate the ACT Alliance General Assembly for remarkable achievements so far. Similar to the ACT Alliance, Caritas is also committed to providing rapid and appropriate response to various humanitarian challenges. In recent years, we have witnessed many crises that require collective attention and action. By prioritizing humanitarian principles, we strive to ensure that every individual has the right to receive assistance they need, regardless of their background. Since sustainability is the key to success, therefore our program focus are not only to providing emergency aid, but also working on community empowerment. We involve community in each step from planning to implementation, so they become agents of change in their own life. Let us use this opportunity to strengthen collaboration, share knowledge, and support each other to achieve our shared vision, a more just and sustainable world for all. Thank you for your attention and support. Let us continue to work together for the good of humanity.
It's now my privilege to welcome to our stage to bring greetings on behalf of the All Africa Council of Churches, the Reverend Anjali Wilson Dogbe. Greetings and thank you for coming.
Reverend Professor Dr. Jerry Pillay, General Secretary of the World Council of Churches and Assembly Chair and Moderator, allow me to stand on the already existing protocol to say it is an honor to me to stand before you today on behalf of the All Africa Conference of Churches General Secretary, Reverend Dr. Fidon Mwambeki, at the ACT Alliance General Assembly, a gathering of passionate individuals committed to making a meaningful impact in our communities and around the world. As we come together in this space, we are reminded of the power of our collective action and shared purpose. The challenges we face with, among others, are climate change, poverty, irregular migration, inequality, and injustice. Those are things that are affecting lives and the needs for our urgent attention and collaborative effort to address them. Friends, those challenges are others constitute the push factors that are pushing our people out of their comfort zone on the road of migration. Migration, which unfortunately, for many of its candidates, ends up pushing them into the cold hands of human trafficking and modern slavery. The AACC, in its quest to preserve human dignity, has embarked on a road to combat human trafficking and modern slavery with the understanding that migration is a choice and not a necessity. Hence, the AACC has embarked on a campaign of Africa, My Home, My Future, which sought to reignite the spirit of Pan-Africanism among young people who are always prompt to migration. In addition, the AACC, in dealing with the phenomena of migration, believes that empowerment and education, partnership and collaboration, as well as awareness raising, among others, are key elements that must be considered to win the fight against migration. In our discussion over the next few days, let us focus on the way we can strengthen our partnerships, leverage our resources, and create innovative solutions that address both immediate needs and long-term systematic changes. As I conclude, allow me to congratulate the ACT Alliance family and wish you well on behalf of Reverend Dr. Fidon Mwambeki, the General Secretary of the AACC, on behalf of the entire AACC family, and on my own behalf. It is our hope that each one of you will carry the spirit of collaboration and compassion into your work, friends. Let us leave this assembly not just with ideas, but with actionable commitment to make a difference. Because together we can be the change we wish to see in the world. And I thank you.
Finally, by video conference, by video presentation, Dr. Michel Abs, the General Secretary of the Middle East Council of Churches, brings us his greetings.
ACT Alliance, a global symbol of Christian togetherness. A main characteristic of the Christian faith is community. Community means living together, sharing feelings, thoughts, vision, and resources. Community means to be one in Christ, one in faith and destiny. Christians throughout history lived together, struggled together, and experienced martyrdom together. This is to be one. For a decade and a half, ACT Alliance is bearing the witness of the Christian service to humanity from an ecumenical perspective. Its background, identity, objectives, vision, and core values incarnate the mission for which Christ came to this world: to advocate, protect, support, and accompany the destitute, the weary, and the heavy laden is the peak of Christian love. Every part of the world is present in ACT Alliance's work. Every affected group is present in its programs and actions. Support is provided regardless of any background whatsoever, based on plight and need. A purely Christian approach that gives lessons to the whole world. ACT is a global Good Samaritan. ACT Alliance's structure encompasses the largest possible number of organizations throughout the world. Every forum in every country has its voice heard and its place reserved in this arena of Christian togetherness. Sharing is also present in the decision-making process as well. Let me linger on the name of ACT Alliance. Blessed are those who created it, as it embodies the essence of the organization and the Christian message it carries. Action is a core value in Christianity since it increases the talents. Acting together means solidarity and common concern. Hope is in action. ACT Alliance, by its sharing and concern with human well-being worldwide, honors the message of the Lord and reinforces togetherness, a very important paradigm for the praxis. By acting, ACT spreads hope. We salute you in your rich and well-organized assembly, and we assure you of our cooperation, which we cherish. Although I accomplished all the preparations, I personally shall not be able to attend due to the situation in Lebanon. But the MECC is deeply present in body and soul through its staff, committees, and mainly through the member churches. Under the distinguished leadership of our brother in Christ, Mr. Rudelmar Bueno de Faria, the ACT Alliance team secures the proper functioning of the organization in the perspective of global better service to the vulnerable people of the world. ACT Alliance makes you feel the warmth of Christian love and care. They help spread salt on the earth.
As our dear Charlotte Belot comes to give us some instructions for lunch and for the afternoon, I would ask you all to join me in a moment of silence and in a word of prayer as we conclude the richness of this morning, the beauty of our conversations, the power of the greetings and solidarity represented by those who have brought greetings. Let us join together in prayer. Holy Mystery, Holy Many, Holy One, God of many names. For the gifts of this alliance and all who stand in solidarity with us, we give you our profound thanks this day. For the rejoining of friendships, for the collegial relationships, for conversations of depth and power, for knowing that we stand together against fundamentalisms and in solidarity with those who have been displaced, prevented from freedom, suffering under conflict, especially in the Middle East, and elsewhere in the world who suffer without freedom, without enough food, without adequate shelter, without dignity and self-determination. This is the work to which we are together called. This is the work it is our privilege to accomplish with one another. This is the work that we cannot accomplish without you. As we continue at a table of fellowship this day, we give you thanks for food and for the many layers of preparation that brought these beautiful meals before us. Guide and sanctify our relationships, our conversations, the breaking of bread, and our deepening commitment to hope together in action and in faith. Amen.
Thank you. So just before you go to break, a few important information always. Heads up for tonight. I know it's only lunch, but heads up for tonight. We will have the honor of having the Sultan of Yogyakarta at dinner with us tonight. For that, there is a strict protocol that needs to be followed. So we ask you to move to the pendopo, which is the outside area where we eat every evening, right after the interfaith prayer. Take a seat without going to the buffet yet, and wait for the Sultan to come. Everyone shall be seated by 6:45 sharp. And don't worry, I will remind this of this afternoon. Today is a great day to open your social media. Post on Instagram, tweet on X about the thematic day and the regional celebrations, but keep the upcoming business sessions out of the web. We will have a press conference in this room during lunch, so please enjoy the hotel surroundings, but leave this room empty. We will have lunch at the pendopo, and if it's full, because there are quite a lot of us, there are a few seats available at the Samazana restaurant, which is where breakfast is served. But for those of you who are in the region, Latin America and the Caribbean, you are expected to go straight to the 8th floor in the room number 4. So Latin America and the Caribbean, wait for lunch, go to the 8th floor to meet with your region. And last but not least, very important, for this afternoon, you will break into sub-themes. So either you have signed up for a sub-theme or you have been assigned to one of them. The information was shared upon registration, as well as in yesterday's email from me. You should have your sub-theme there. If you still don't know which sub-theme you should go, if you have deleted my email, which is absolutely fine, visit the information desk. They have the list and they can let you know where you should go. So on the screen, you see the 3 sub-themes. Sub-theme number 1, a not-so-common agenda, will meet on the 8th floor in the room called Karaton. Sub-theme number 2, pushing back against the pushback, will meet in room Trajumas, which is on the 2nd floor. And sub-theme number 3, which will be interpreted in French and Spanish, will meet here. So Together for Justice will meet in this room. So I think this is what I wanted to say. Be back on time for your conversation, so for your sub-theme, sorry. So we'll start at 2 sharp. So especially if you're meeting on the 8th floor, make sure that you start your way up there maybe 10-15 minutes before, so we are starting right on time. Enjoy your lunch.
Oh gosh.